to cover. So the compression is going to cost about $3 billion, okay, for the 4 pennies. And so they're confident that there is going to be enough ongoing state revenue to cover that. You know, back in 2005, 2006, when there was compression, you know, I think they did underestimate how much it would cost at the time. In retrospect, it cost $10 billion, you know, each biennium to pay for a third, you know, to go from $1.50 down to $1. And so, that franchise tax was never going to make up $10 billion, and it didn't, and that's what led to the funding shortage in 2011. So they don't think that'll happen with the sales taxes, but you know the comptroller did put out there, you know, a word of caution with regard to, you know, the sales taxes, because you know they can waver as the economy wavers.
Right, that's exactly right. My last question is on page 9. We have the original hold harmless, and then we have the additional hold harmless, which you're saying is approximately $18 to $20 million for 5 years. But is that 18 to 20 million divided by 5, or is
No, sir. No, that's
per year?
Per year.
Do we qualify for that?
I mean, we do right now. That's what Mokasey is showing in their numbers, because that takes us up to the 3%. But before, we were below 3%. Any way you sliced the way House Bill 3 would work out, and so bringing us up to 3%. Would equate to the way they're calculating is 18.6, and I just saw that. I just got that number at 4:30 today from Mokasey out of Austin.
Hot off the press. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Bassett.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Mrs. James.
Thank you, Mr. Burdine, and thank you, Mr. Rice, for your comments and your questions, and also Mrs. Tossan. I have a question on the picture that's the map. My understanding of this slide, and I just want to make sure I understand it. So in House Bill 3, with the loss of the cost of education index, that causes our basically revenue to be reduced.
Right.
And this is a representation of the impact of that on our Region 4 districts, is that?
Yes, and
correct?
so that's one of the reasons why you see such differences. Most of the school districts, all the larger ones, were at a CEI of 16, which is where we're at. Now the smaller ones maybe were less, and so if they're smaller with the lower CEI, CEI goes away. You know, it doesn't hurt them. They actually could gain if they were below 12. But the other reason why you see differences, I mean, A-Leaf is right next to us, you know, right above us there, but their free and reduced count is so high, okay, that they're definitely going to have a much larger increase because of the change in comp ed weights. And so they are going to end up, you know, well above, you know, that where we're at. Spring Branch, which is right by them, they have the added benefit of being a recapture district. I mean, you know, I'm sure they would, if they were hearing this right now, they're saying, you know, yeah, you don't want to be a recapture district, but because it's such a big change for the recapture districts, and they're at 56% free and reduced. I mean, their free and reduced percentage is higher than us. So you have the big change in recapture, change in the comp ed weights. So that's why you see a big disparity between us and them as well. And so yeah, so it's all over the map literally when you look at those differences, and it could have some real staffing implications in the future.
So the competitive edge then goes to the districts with a higher free and reduced lunch count. Is that?
Yeah, or under recapture, sure. Or the recapture districts.
Or the recapture districts, because they would have less recapture.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I'm digesting that. My second question is back to one of the beginning slides, but you don't need to switch back there.
Okay.
It was I think you said that there is no text for the Senate Bill 4, which would be the public ed funding. There's an outline, but there's no real text to it.
Yeah, there's no meat to it.
Right, so we don't really know what that is. Do we have any preliminary indications of what might be there, and what might our challenges be, in case we were messaging our
Well, no, I mean, definitely, I mean, like the CEI not being in there is part of their bill. Okay, CEI, they don't keep the CEI. But they have other things like, the mandatory pre-K is also in their bill. Okay, so, that's in both sides. And so, they did try to follow the, school finance commission, guidelines and all. They didn't include everything. Like, I don't know if the dual language is in there. I need to go back and check. But they don't have compression the same way. Okay.
Okay,
So there are some major differences, and of course, the whole salary thing is really the biggest difference between the two chambers, is the mandatory salary increases.
right, and the Senate doesn't have, they've only identified librarians and classroom teachers.
Right.
Which creates a whole other side of inequity,
Yes,
whole
ma'am.
another challenge. Okay, so, so you really just have the bare bones, and we don't really know what that might look like.
Right, like the specific of the, I think it does have 8 golden pennies, but the timing, a lot of the mechanics, behind
Right.
that, the compression of the copper pennies, I don't think is in there, but, again, I could be wrong.
So the messaging around it would be issues that we recognize in House Bill 3 could be messages to the senators around things that, that we would not be in favor of in terms of, okay. And I didn't fully understand your conversation around the pre-K, but I think we might just hold, kind of like Mr. Rice said, we might as well just hold on that until we get to something of the realities.
Yeah.
Again, I guess I'll just say this, is that's become, a big priority for our district. In fact, that's how we, that's our whole strategy around servicing our neediest kids. So when, we have to advocate for that, for financial help in that area, because if we don't, then we have to take our whole strategy and toss it out the window to jump to whatever the state strategy becomes. So it seems odd to me. Well, it's just uncertainty. So anyway, we'll look forward. Thank you for that update. Thank you for all your hard work. Thank you to Veronica, because I know she's been sending us emails with very helpful summaries. And are those emails going out to the board? Are they available to the community at all?
There's no reason they couldn't be available. Right now, they're going to the board.
Yeah, I think that would be really good. If you could, if those could be posted even on the board's part of the web page, so that they're public facing, so that everybody in the community could kind of follow. Because she's been doing it on a weekly, or even last week, I think there were a couple of them. And it's very good information with the bill numbers, so if people wanted to contact their representatives, they could do that. So
Good.
I don't know where she went, because I wanted to thank her in person, but hopefully she'll watch the video of the meeting and get it.
But
Thank you.
part of our, next week, we will have Dr. Zai-Vedra and I, we're working on a pre-K briefing that we'll have for the group next week.
Oh, good, okay, because I am interested in that. Thank you very much, and thanks in advance for all your hard work between,
Thank you.
the next few days.
Thank you, Mrs. James, Mrs. Tolsan.
I just wanted to respond to that we did talk about at the beginning, or I guess in the fall, about having a sort of call to action page where we could ask our constituents to go out. So maybe that's the good way to do it, is to be able to put those updates on there. And especially now that it's going over to the Senate, we know a little bit more what the House bill looks like, and that makes it better, easier for us. One other comment I just wanted to make, that I wanted to make sure is crystal clear, because the speaker and I had a little bit of an exchange over this, that what our constituents, what taxpayers need to understand is that $9 billion is not actually going all into education. About $3 billion of that, as Steve said, is to the tax compression. So I told him that it was going to be difficult to explain, because school finance is very complex, that it would be difficult to explain to taxpayers what's really in the bill, and that $9 billion everybody's seeing splashed across the headlines, that $9 billion is going into education. And that's not entirely true. $3 billion of that is into tax compression. $6 billion is going into pub ed, and it doesn't address at all special education, which is where a big part of our funding gap is coming in. So, so he challenged me a little bit on that and said that people could understand that, but I think we're going to have our work cut out for us, because the likelihood, I mean, even from our bond presentations, we know that a TRE is imminent. We're going to have to do it, and we have talked about it. When that has to happen, of course, is the million or billion dollar question, maybe in this case. But it's going to be important for our voters to understand that the bill doesn't have everything in it that is being claimed. So I just think that that's going to be our communication challenge when the time comes. So I wanted to put that out there now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Tossan. Mrs. James.
Just to respond to that, so thank you, Kristen. That's helpful, and it occurs to me that even I can't recall on the little blurbs that the communications team has been sending out. If they're if it's sort of a clear that it's a thumbs up or a thumbs down on the impact, it might be clear to us the way it's written, but that might be an ad that there's a thumbs up or a thumbs down on those, so it is a little clearer. And then the other thing is, I think points like you're making in our case, where we can foresee the $20-30 million gap in special education funding, that needs to be out there so that the community can know this is a real problem that is not being addressed by the state legislature. I mean, I think it's important that gets out there. I mean, that's a real obvious one. I don't know if there are any other real obvious ones, but that's a huge, I mean, that's going to basically, that's going to cause us to have to do the TRE, right? I mean,
Exactly.
that in and of itself.
That and the literacy, I mean, some of our priorities that we've invested in that are literally showing closing the achievement gaps.
Right.
That we, depending on how this shakes out, we may not be able to fund. So
Right.
those are going to be big gaps that have to be filled. And, with a community that's hearing, seeing their property taxes rise, and they're hearing in Austin, we're going to get property taxes under control. And the way they're doing that is with a compression. And they're literally telling us, when we say, how are we going to make up these gaps that you're not addressing? And they are literally telling us, you need to go out for a TRE. You need to raise your taxes. So our legislators, that's what they're saying to us. And we were trying to explain the challenges when all of this is going on in Austin, and us trying to educate and inform our voters. And they're literally telling us, well, you need to go raise your taxes. Yeah, but you're telling them you're going to cap their taxes and lower their tax rate, and now you're telling us to go back out and raise it. So it's going to be quite a challenge.
Well, and it's very annoying because they can be the hero and we can be the goats, and that's not how it's supposed to work. We're here to manage the money by assessing our local needs and the needs of our district and the needs of our community, and then make those judgments. And that's the whole fallacy. That's why, just on the surface, it appears that there's a lot of folks at the state level that don't support the public education system, and that's frustrating. So just to piggyback off what I said a minute ago, this slide 15, Steve, has got sort of our strategic priorities, and I think that would just be a good thing to add to that list, because or the bill list, if we post that on the board's site, because some of those things are being addressed, is clear, and some are not. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. James. Mr. Rosenthal.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bassett, thank you for helping to clear up some of the mud, and we're looking forward to some updated predictions, hopefully getting some that are, help guide us a little more so we know what we can do next month when we actually have to start adopting budgets. And I just wanted to back up what Ms. Tossin and Ms. James has said. This is kind of what I said last week or last month, you know, that they're just playing a shell game. That's all they're doing. And I don't know if we're being made to look like goats or something worse. So I don't know I don't know what to call it. Yeah. So I guess I'll take a goat. Yeah. Anyway, thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Thank you, Mrs. Tossan, for being our legislative liaison and doing all that hard work. And thank you, Mrs. James, as well, for your work. And then, Mr. Bassett, we appreciate you representing us, and you make public education better in Texas. And if all of you that don't know, Mr. Bassett is a leader in what he does, and there's a lot of people around the state that look at what he does, and he does it very well. So we're proud to have you here. So thank you. Next are our audience items, and I don't believe we have anyone that has signed up. Is there anyone in the audience tonight that would like to speak regarding any of the action items posted on this agenda? Seeing none, we will now convene in closed session under the Texas Open Meetings Act, Chapter 551, and those sections listed in the agenda, and for the purpose of private consultation with the board's attorney, as any or all subject matters authorized by law. We are now convening in closed session.